Speed your shuttle and change your tune. The faster the singing, the faster the loom.
The year 1812 was quite a year in the wool and cloth industry of the West Riding of Yorkshire, culminating in the uprising of the Luddites, when there certainly was trouble up at Mill. It all started in the early 1500s, in the hills and valleys of the West Riding, where there were streams and waterfalls, small farms and sheep. It was the farmers' wives who realised that sheep had little use other than to keep the grass short, so decided to make cloth for their own use. But farming declined, so the men also made cloth, not for themselves, however, but for sale. Trade flourished, and soon he was able to build himself a house of stone with mullioned windows to give more light, and an upper room to accommodate a loom, on which he himself would work.
When you work as a hand loom weaver, from the time when your legs can reach,
the work's a part of your family. You've children at home, you will teach.
This is a sort of teasing of the wool, which the children usually did, for the wife to spin, for the clothier to weave on his loom. In fact, it became a cottage industry, and anyone passing would hear the thud of the loom and the clack of the shuttle, except on market day, when he would take his piece to an open-air market. He would travel by foot, donkey or horse, according to his circumstances, and would most likely pass over one of these arched packhorse bridges, specially designed with a low parapet to protect the cloth. His piece would be unfinished, and the merchant who bought it would have to have it finished in the fulling mill in the valley, and finished by a cropper, said to be the elite of the industry, who had to be big, strong and highly skilled to wield the shears, 4 foot long and 40 to 50 pounds in weight. The time now is in the 1800s. Now, prior to the Luddite uprisings, England was at war with France. And at the time of the uprisings, we were at war with America. Well, after which, there were several bad harvests, high taxation, high unemployment, and even starvation, all taking its toll. Then the wind of change came over the valley with the coming of machinery, and things would never be the same again.
my heart remains in this valley, though things are happening fast.
The first inventions from Lancashire were eventually adapted for the wool and cloth industry, which greatly accelerated manufacture. The next invention turned the valley upside down, with mills coming down to the river, and for the first time in history, the valley was dotted with mills and mill chimneys, increasing as time went on.
It hurts the pride of the weaver to discover what progress means.
The important invention was a cropping frame, operated by one skilled, highly paid man, doing the work of 10. Then a paragraph appeared in the Leeds Mercury. The croppers and some other workers were gathered in John Wood's cropping shop, including the Reverend John Booth.
What does it say then?
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Framework knitters in Nottingham were angry when one type of machinery had been adapted for knitting stockings. Fearing a drop in their wages, the framework knitters broke into their workplace and smashed the machines with hammers. Steady lads, there's more. There was a leader named or known as Ned Ludd.
Good man.
He too smashed a machine, but left immediately afterwards and has not been seen since.
If them machines destroy us, it'll be the workhouse for us.
Steady on, Mella.
The name Ludd became synonymous with the resentment and with the smashing of frames. Every district in the West Riding had its king or General Ludd in charge of a group who became known as the Luddites.
In this area, under the leadership of George Mellor, they used to meet in the Shears Inn, Liversedge, and it was probably here that they were sworn to secrecy and took an oath called Twist In, swearing never to betray each other in pain of being blotted out of existence. Standing in the middle of Marsden is a tomb where two brothers, Enoch and James Taylor, were laid to rest. They were both blacksmiths turned machine makers by their own ingenuity, so when the cropper machines were invented, they started making them for their local mill owners, who were determined to use them in spite of the Luddites and their threatening letters. Enoch also made hammers and was taunted by the Luddites, saying, "Enoch makes them and Enoch breaks them." Two of the mill owners concerned were William Cartwright of Rawford's Mill, Cleckheaton, and William Horsforth of Ottewell Mills, Marsden, who publicly and repeatedly bragged, scorned and defied them.
They'll never break into my mill, I'll tell you that.
They'll not break into mine either, but they're very determined.
Not as determined as I am. I've been sleeping in my mill for the past 6 weeks, and I'm well fortified. And don't forget, I've got connections with the militia, and they've agreed to guard my mill.
While you've been sleeping in your mill, I've been helping to track down the Luddites. And don't you forget, I've got connections with the Huddersfield Fusiliers. They have a cannon, so my mill is well covered.
All the same, you should stay and look after your mill, and leave the Luddites to the soldiers.
The Luddites know every inch of those moors, but so do I. The soldiers don't. All they'll hear is the cropper's song. I doubt if leaving at sea, never mind capture them.
However, I'd watch my back if I were you.
Speed your shuttle and change your tune.
On April the 11th, the Luddites, under the leadership of George Mellor, King Lud, who had gathered together between 100 and 150 other Luddites, met at Dum Steeple, Longroyd Bridge. They were armed with hammers, axes and firearms purloined from lonely moorland homesteads, often using violence. Their intention to attack Rawfield's Mill, Cleckheaton, emboldened by a successful encounter of a delivery of cropper frames.
Oh, well, his last lot of cropping frames didn't get there. they ambushed them up at that side.
They did.
They have. They've smashed them up. They're in the field.
Oh, that's good news.
Upon arrival at the mill, the sight of the militia surprised but did not deter the Luddites from trying to gain entry, with little success. And when someone fired a shot, it was quickly taken up by the militia, resulting in several Luddites being seriously wounded and the death of Mellor's friend John Booth and one other.
What went on at Rawford's Mill last week?
Well, we started off with like 100 of us from here. And we
Right.
picked a few more up on the way to Cleckheaton, and when we got there, you wouldn't believe it, but the whole place were like a fortress.
Nay.
He's put great steel bands across his gates, and there were two.
Oh.
It got two militiamen standing outside. Got there, we thought, well, hang on a minute, we haven't come for a shooting
no
match.
fighting.
So we sort of backed off. They got the rifles down, but they weren't for shooting at us, I have to say.
Well, what were the local militia?
No, can't. It's been fetching them in from all over. Cumbria, Northumberland.
Yes.
He has.
Well, I suppose he's never going to get locals to shoot on his own
Well,
farm.
he's a captain, isn't he, in Halifax lot.
Approximately 2 weeks later, as William Horsfall was on his way home from market, George Mellor, incensed by the death of John Booth, hid with his friends behind a wall and some bushes. As he passed by, they shot, wounding him in the thigh, causing him to fall off his horse. He died later that night.
The culprits went into hiding, but come the autumn, were betrayed by friend Benjamin Walker, who never actually received it, spending the rest of his life in poverty, ostracised by everybody.
Trials were held in York, and out of approximately 64 prisoners, 30 were discharged for lack of evidence. Others put in prison or deported. Mellor and his two remaining friends and 14 others involved were hanged.
The unrest went on for some time, but Luddism was over.
The achievements of General Ludd, now the hero of Nottinghamshire. Brave Ludd was to measures of violence unused, till his sufferings became so severe, that at last to defend his own interests he roused, and for the great fight did prepare.